Right now, somewhere in North America, a football match is being played. The tickets to watch it cost more than a return flight to Paris. One ticket to the final, listed on FIFA's own resale platform, sold for $11.5 million. And here's the wild part. FIFA doesn't own a single team. They don't pay player wages. They don't build the stadiums. They just run the tournament. And they're about to pocket $13 billion doing it. This is the story of how FIFA turned a football tournament into one of the most ruthlessly efficient money machines in the history of sport. And why the cities hosting it might actually lose money in the process. To understand why 2026 is different, you have to understand what FIFA actually is. FIFA, the Fédération Internationale de Football Association, is, on paper, a non-profit organization. It's based in Zurich, Switzerland. It has 211 member nations. That's more than the United Nations. And for most of its 120-year history, it operated like many sports governing bodies do, collecting fees, distributing funds, running the occasional tournament. Then the World Cup became the most watched event on the planet. Suddenly, the economics changed completely. The 2006 World Cup in Germany generated around $1.5 billion in revenue. By 2018, in Russia, that had more than tripled to $5.3 billion. Qatar, 2022, hit $7 billion. And now, in 2026, FIFA is projecting $13 billion. Nearly double what it made just 4 years ago. So what changed? 3 things: size, control, and one very controversial pricing strategy. The 2026 World Cup is the biggest in history. By design, for the first time ever, 48 teams are competing. That's up from 32. The number of matches jumped from 64 to 104, and instead of one host nation, there are 3: the United States, Canada, and Mexico. On the surface, this looks like a celebration of global football. But look closer, and it's actually a masterclass in revenue engineering. More teams means more games. More games means more broadcast slots to sell. More broadcast slots means more ad revenue flowing to TV networks, which means they'll pay more for the rights in the first place. FIFA's broadcast rights alone are expected to generate $4 billion for this tournament. That's up from $3.1 billion in Qatar. And the 3-country format adds another layer. By spreading matches across North America, across cities like New York, Los Angeles, Dallas, Toronto, Mexico City, FIFA taps into what is arguably the world's most valuable advertising market. American audiences, American advertisers, American eyeballs. For a European sport that had long struggled to crack the US market, this was a calculated bet, and it's paying off. The 2026 World Cup will be the most watched sporting event in American history. Networks aren't just paying for football. They're paying for the Super Bowl, repeated every 3 days, for a month. So where does the $13 billion actually come from? Let's break it down. Broadcasting rights, $4 billion. Every country on Earth wants to show World Cup matches. TV networks and streaming platforms bid against each other for the rights to their territory. The more desirable the market, the more they pay. The US alone commands billions. And with over 200 territories covered, the revenue stacks up fast. The US alone commands billions. And with over 200 territories covered, the revenue stacks up fast. Sponsorship, $1.8 billion. Sponsorship, $1.8 billion, and rising. FIFA has a tiered commercial structure. At the top are global partners, brands like Adidas, Coca-Cola, and Visa, who sponsor every FIFA event. Below them sit tournament-specific sponsors and regional supporters. For 2026, FIFA has nearly sold out its entire commercial inventory. One notable addition, Aramco, the Saudi state energy giant, joined as an official partner. FIFA is on track to generate the highest sponsorship revenue in history for a standalone sporting event. Ticketing and hospitality, $3 billion. This is where 2026 gets genuinely controversial. For the first time at a World Cup, FIFA deployed dynamic pricing, prices that float with demand. The same model used for airline seats and concert tickets. In practice, this means tickets to popular games have sold for many times what comparable seats cost in Qatar. One group stage match in New York reportedly had seats listed for thousands of dollars each. The final? Up to $7,875 for a Category 1 seat at face value. And FIFA set up its own official resale platform, taking a 15% cut from both buyer and seller. FIFA's president, Gianni Infantino, defended the pricing by pointing to US market norms. But the backlash was significant. Critics argued it had effectively priced out the global football fan. The total cost to run it all? $3.76 billion, against projected revenue of $8.9 billion, an extraordinary margin. Here's where the story gets uncomfortable. For most of World Cup history, a local organizing committee managed the tournament, absorbing costs but also sharing in the upside. Revenue from tickets, sponsorship, and TV was split between FIFA and the host. In 2026, that model was scrapped entirely. FIFA took over direct control of the tournament. It negotiated contracts directly with each of the 16 host cities. And under those contracts, FIFA keeps essentially all the revenue: media rights, sponsorship, ticketing, hospitality, merchandise. The cities, they get the costs: security, transport upgrades, stadium retrofits, fan zones, emergency services, public infrastructure. All of it falls on local governments. In Canada, the Parliamentary Budget Officer estimated total government support at over $1 billion Canadian. That works out to roughly $82 million per match hosted. In the United States, a review of host city contracts found that almost all organizing costs fall on the cities, and while their ability to collect revenue is severely restricted. One sports economist described it plainly: the cities don't get the revenue, but they get the costs, which can run well over $100 million each. New York City's own comptroller ran the numbers and concluded that even if FIFA's visitor projections materialized in full, the tax revenue flowing back to the city would be a fraction of what it was spending to host. Think of it as a franchise model in reverse. The franchisor, FIFA, keeps the receipts. The franchisees, the cities, pay to operate the business. It's a structure that only works because cities are competing to host. The prestige, the visibility, the national pride, these are real, even if the economics don't quite add up. FIFA cites analysis from the World Trade Organization, suggesting the 2026 World Cup will generate $80 billion in gross economic output, including over $40 billion contributed to global GDP. Those are extraordinary numbers, and they may well be real at a macro level. But economists have long warned that mega event projections tend to overstate impact. Regular tourists avoid host cities during tournaments. Local residents cut back on spending. Governments divert public funds from other priorities. The US hospitality industry was skeptical enough to publish a report noting that hotel booking demand was below expectations in the lead-up to the tournament. What the World Cup does do, reliably, is generate media exposure. The kind that can reshape how a city, a swarad, or a country, is perceived globally. That's real value. It's just very hard to put a number on. And for the 48 participating nations, there is direct, measurable value. Prize money. FIFA has committed a record $871 million in prize money for 2026. Every team that qualifies earns at least $12.5 million, $2 million more than in Qatar. Win the whole thing, and you're looking at $53.5 million. For smaller football federations, that money funds grassroots programs, coaching infrastructure, and youth development for years. None of this happened by accident. When Gianni Infantino ran for the FIFA presidency in 2016, he made one central promise. He would quadruple the organization's income. At the time, that seemed ambitious to the point of fantasy. A decade later, he's on track to deliver it. The expanded 48-team format was his idea. The shift to direct FIFA control of the tournament was his decision. The dynamic pricing model was introduced under his watch. Even the Club World Cup, relaunched in 2025 with 32 teams, was his project, generating an additional $2 billion in revenue for the current commercial cycle. His critics argue he's commercialized football's governing body beyond recognition, that the World Cup has become less about sport and more about extracting maximum value from a captive global audience. His defenders argue that the money flows back into the game, that the 211 member federations receive distributions from FIFA's revenues, that grassroots football in developing nations is funded by the success of the tournament. Both things can be true simultaneously. What's beyond debate is the result. FIFA is now one of the most financially powerful sports organizations on Earth, generating more revenue per cycle than the NFL makes in a single season. So here's the final question. Who actually wins from the 2026 World Cup? FIFA wins. Clearly and emphatically, sponsors and broadcasters win. They've bought access to the most watched event in human history. The participating nations win. In prize money, in visibility, in the intangible but real benefit of reaching a World Cup. The fans who can afford to attend win. Though for many global football supporters, the ticket prices have put that out of reach for the first time. And the host cities, the economics suggest they'll spend hundreds of millions and recover a fraction of it. What they gain in return is harder to quantify, but it's not nothing. The 2026 World Cup is the clearest possible expression of what football has become at the highest level. Not just a sport, a $13 billion business, run by an organization with no shareholders to answer to, no relegation to fear, and no off-season. And the next one is already being planned. If you found this breakdown useful, the channel covers the business of sport, money, and power every week. Subscribe, because the story behind the story is always more interesting.